This is the MochaFootball.com. This is the MochaFootball.com weekly podcast. Damon, this has to be one of the better stretches that we've had in County in a while, man, because it's like back to back to back. We had a little time right there. It was a little bit rough, you know. It was a little bit rough, man. These past few weeks have been really, really good when it comes on to the excitement, to the build-up of the games and everything like that. We've had a couple of rivalry games, and now this week we have one of the biggest of them all in the state. We're going to get into that. We also have Connor Frazier and Tanner Vallely from Towson, you know, Connor from Damascus and Tanner from Seneca Valley back in the day. They're going to join the show, talk about the rivalry and everything like that. Last week, of course, my Warriors got it done. We're going to get into that. Damon, what are some of the things that you've been excited about the last few weeks with all these rivalry games going on?
Yeah, like you mentioned, we've been blessed in the late part of the season here. 2 weeks ago, we had QO Northwest. Last week, we had Sherwood Paint Branch. And this week, we get Seneca Valley Damascus. And as the weeks have progressed, the games have become more and more important, even outside of the individual rivalries, especially when you take into account potential playoffs and even playoff seeding. So, yeah, I mean, it's extremely exciting. It doesn't get any better than this, especially this week. I mean, you have two undefeated teams, two longtime rivals, playoff seeding on the line. It doesn't get any better than that. And even outside of those games, there's been a good number of intriguing matchups outside of the playoffs. Richard Montgomery, the sleeper team of the year, rising up and literally looking better and better each week. So far to the point where, from this point going forward, I would hesitate to pick against them in the remaining two games.
Right.
You still have Gaithersburg and Clarksburg in the hunt. And then down in 3A, outside of Damascus and Seneca Valley, you still have 3, possibly 4 other teams, despite their record, still in the playoff hunt. It's going to come down to the very last week. At least 2 of those teams, whether they get in or not. So, yeah, these final 2 weeks, it's going to be extremely interesting. There's a lot of games to watch. There's going to be a lot of scoreboard watching going on. So, yeah. I can't express how excited I am for the final 2 games.
It's been really, really exciting, and I think that this is going to go a long way to what we're going to see in the future when it comes to the playoffs. Talking about going into it, thinking that this was going to be an exciting game. Our last week's game of the week, Paint Branch going over to Sandy Spring to take on the Warriors. We all know about the bad blood that's been created over the last few years. Paint Branch has pretty much dominated the division last three or so years. You know, they definitely had the right to kind of walk around like the Kings for a little bit. Sherwood, obviously, they wanted to prove that they were back to the usual Sherwood ways and the dominant ways that we've seen in the past. You know, I think that this game was really personal for both teams. You could see it on their faces when you walked out there. There was a lot of old alumni on both sides. Obviously, it was a special atmosphere going into it. Then now when the game started, Travis Levy, what more can be said about the kid, man? I mean, he really picked up from his performance from last season against Paint Branch when he really dominated the second half of the game. They came up short. And I remember talking to him, and one thing that he mentioned was he remembered getting stopped on a 4th and 3 play last year. That kind of haunted him, and he swore that would never happen again. Over 170 yards on the ground. And I think that he set the tone. I think last year, Paint Branch was the more physical team early on, and I think they really set the tone. But this year, Travis really set the tone for Sherwood. I think that once they saw Travis get going, I think they really got the confidence. I think that first drive that Sherwood had really rose their confidence. I'm pretty sure they were confident going into the game, but when they saw how smooth that drive went, and it really went without hiccup, I think that they really got themselves to a point where they went from, okay, we can win this game, to we may be able to dominate this game. And did they ever, man? They went on. The game was more mental, physical, in my opinion. I think that there was a few things that happened to Paint Branch that kind of got them off the game a little bit. The fact that Travis was able to run the ball as effectively, I don't think that they were anticipating that at all. I think that mentally, when Paint Branch saw what Travis was doing and the fact that they couldn't stop him at all, I think that was kind of demoralizing for them a little bit. It was hard for them to rebound. And then, of course, Marcus Sims was Marcus Sims. He was special. That touchdown that he had the end of the half, I mean, that was something that I think, again, mentally, you know, having that happen right before you go into halftime was the straw that broke the camel's back almost. Kind of told Payne Branch that not this year. I think all those things, plus the fact that Sherwood did a really good job getting to Amani. They really put pressure on him. Number 17 for Sherwood had a great game, along with Bob Johnjo. Those two guys really were coming off the edges, beating the offensive tackles for Payne Branch consistently. Armani couldn't step up into the pocket because while they're rushing, you had Big Charles Siarkas pushing the middle of the pocket, and so I mean he really had nowhere to go, and he took some slides in the backfield to make sure that he didn't get hit. Ivan indeed still had over 100 yards. I mean, that kid's a beast. Putting him in, it's going to be a bad matchup for anybody that plays him. I still think that Payne Branch is a really good team. I think that they just honestly ran into a team that was a little bit more focused, a little bit more ready, and proved that they're back. To all the Payne Branch people out there, the season's not over. You win 2 games, you're in the playoffs. We're going to get into it a week from now, but you know they got the big game versus QO, and that's the reason why a lot of people think that the season's over because they're facing QO, but a lot of good things working for them. Damon, what are your takeaways from the result?
I mentioned in last week's podcast that I think the difference in this game would be Travis Levy. So his performance wasn't too much of a surprise, but what did catch my eye was the way Sean Bliss and the receiving corps played. If you would have told me Bliss would end up with more yards and more touchdowns than Armani Sabalos, I probably would have betted against that.
Right.
But that's exactly what ended up happening. Bliss played an outstanding game, going 16 for 27, 277 yards and 5 touchdowns. I mean,
right.
Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, that's his best game of the year, and what a time to break that out. In addition to Bliss's passing performance, it wasn't like every ball was to Marcus Sims. Obviously, Sims was double the majority of the game, but when that happens, that means somebody's open, or at least somebody's in single coverage. And there were several kids in single coverage. I think there were 7 receivers, or 7 players, including Travis Levy, that got into the passing attack.
Right.
And when you're spreading the ball around like that, it's tough for the defense to adjust, and that's exactly what happened. So, yeah, my takeaway from that game was Sean Bliss's play and how he spread the well.
Right.
Not only was it Travis Levy in the rushing attack, and he had an outstanding game with 180 yards, but yeah, it was a
Christian
balanced attack. I think that was going to be it.
Right. Christian Wills, he made a bunch of big plays. Number 7 for Sherwood. Just to give a name to some of the guys that you're talking about.
Agreed. Literally, I'm not surprised by the result, but I'm surprised by the outcome of this game. I thought it would be a little bit closer, but Sherwood just opened up the floodgates in the second quarter with that 22-point quarter, and from that point, Payne Branch was basically playing catch-up. And if you're playing catch-up against a team like Sherwood, it's going to be hard to pull off. And even though they played pretty much even in the second half, it's too little too late for the Payne Branch Panthers. With that being said, they dropped their first game of the season. They're sitting at 7-1 now, with 2 games left in the season. They should get a little bit of a breather this week versus Northwood, but the Cougars are coming to town in Week 10, and if Payne Branch wants to make the playoffs, they really need to get a W versus QO. For Sherwood, they're sitting pretty now. They get Kennedy this week, Einstein in Week 10. I don't expect them to have any trouble handling either one of the teams. So, yeah, undefeated on the field. I think even though you can't look past your 2 opponents, I got a good feeling their eyes are on the playoffs and the teams in 4A North, specifically speaking, Howard. But yeah,
right.
It's starting to shape up how we thought they.
Moving on, Damon, This is the game that's been talked about for a while. Ever since Seneca Valley beat Northwest, we looked at the schedule. We were kind of like, okay, they're gonna have themselves probably about 6 bye weeks, right? And the Seneca Valley Damascus rivalry is back, right? Last few years, in my opinion, I don't know how much Seneca really believed they were going to win that game. I feel like they weren't in a good space as a program last 2 years, and for many reasons. This year, I think that this is going to be one hell of a game, man. When you're talking about these two teams, Damon, you're talking about two teams that have taken care of business, had no hiccups along the way. I mean, very clean performances all across the board. Yeah, they weren't really facing the greatest opponents, but they took care of business just like we thought they would. When you really break it down and you look at what Jake Funk has been able to do consistently throughout the season, and what he did to Quince Orchard, you would have to say that definitely Damascus has the psychological edge and the physical edge going into a game with a kid like that. But in my opinion, when you really look at both teams, I think overall, I think that Seneca, outside of, and we just got done talking about Sherwood, outside of maybe Sherwood, I'll say QO, I think that Seneca is one of the better overall teams, well-rounded. Offense, defense, special teams, all facets, all levels, right? Very hard to find weaknesses. Very hard to find weak spots where you can pick on for Seneca. And I think that I think that they have a really good shot in this game, a better shot than what people are going to be giving them credit for. Damascus, they have an element that nobody's been able to deal with so far, right? They have a guy that honestly, I'm questioning whether he's human or not sometimes. Like he's been that good. So it's one of those situations where they haven't really had to rely upon the other elements on their team. My question is going to be, if Seneca Valley is able to force them to rely upon these other elements, whether it's the passing game, other players that are on the team in the running game, if they force them to have to rely upon it, I'm not even talking about stopping Jake Funk. I mean, it could be a situation where, Jake is not, going off for a 200-yard game or something like that, 200, 300-yard game. If they can keep it reasonable with Jake and make it go into the last quarter, maybe a 1-2 possession game, and kind of force Damascus into, make them uncomfortable and force them into territories they haven't been before. Are they going to be able to? Who's going to step up for Damascus? Who's going to be that guy? Now, a guy that we all, we've been talking about, we've talked about on the show before is Marcus Vincent. He's a guy that definitely last in the championship game, he really flashed and showed what he could do for the offense. So they got other guys other than Jake. But I think that's my biggest thing is, what do you think about this game, Damon?
Yeah, this is literally what we've all been waiting for, especially when it comes to 3A. Damascus has been on a roll the past few years, unchallenged in the 3A division locally in Montgomery County. And we've been waiting for Seneca Valley to pose a threat for a few years now. Despite their overall tremendous record, when they've matched up with Seneca Valley, it's been rough.
Right.
The games haven't been close at all. Finally, Coach Kim has the pieces in place where it looks like Seneca can finally challenge the undisputed champ of 3A in Montgomery County. It's going to be interesting. Like you mentioned, it basically comes down to this. Can the Seneca Valley defense slow down Jake Funk? Stopping him is out of the question. That's just not realistic. Slowing it down and forcing the other players for Damascus to step up in a way they haven't had to do in all the season.
Right.
Is the key, basically.
I mean, try to keep it under 200. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right. Exactly.
if you could, Look, if they can keep them under a 200, I think that will put them in a decent spot. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's basically going to come down to slowing down in Jake Funk and forcing Julian Kennard to make throws.
Right.
And non-passing down.
Right. Exactly.
It's as simple as that. Also, on the offensive side for Seneca, Felice Platt is going to have an outstanding game. I take that back. Not just only on the offensive side of the ball. He's going to have a great game on both sides.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's one of the rare two-way starters for top backs in the county. Matter of fact, him and Jake Funk go both ways. So I got a feeling both of them are going to need a nice long ice bath at the end of Friday night. Yeah, but in order for Seneca Valley to pull out the victory, I expect Felice Platt to have an excellent game on both sides of the ball. For Damascus, they just need to keep on what they're doing. No team in the county has come close to stopping their running attack.
Nope.
Their defense has been lights out all year long. With that being said, the sample size that we have for both teams, Seneca and Damascus, is very, very small. I mean, if you really want to look at what both teams can do, you only have really two games to look at. It's a QO game for Damascus and a Northwest game for Seneca Valley. All the other games for both of these teams have been just slaughters.
Yeah.
Literally slaughters.
Yeah.
The games were over at the end of the first quarter. None of these teams have really been challenged by any stretch of the imagination. So taking that into account, I think both teams will be unveiling things that we haven't seen all season. What that may be, I have no idea, but I fully expect. Yeah, I mean, the time for talking's over. There's been a lot of trash talk on social media.
Isn't it like that all the time now? Like,
yeah, that's what I was about to say. That's no different than any year.
Yeah,
it's no secret these teams don't like each other. This goes back decades.
Oh, by the way, shout out to Coach Kim. Posting stuff on on his wall.
Oh yeah, I love it.
Regular visitor. We appreciate the love. We appreciate the clicks. My man.
There's nothing better than bulletin board material pulled from mocofootball.com.
Absolutely.
Outstanding.
Salute.
But yeah, this is it. In less than 24 hours, the two teams in green and gold are going to strap it up. We're going to find out who the king of 3A is temporarily, because
right.
I fully expect both of these teams to meet again in the playoffs. And that's one thing to keep in mind. This isn't a one and done deal. This is like the first round of a 2-round fight.
Right.
So, I mean,
real quick, do you expect that to kind of affect the game plans in any way?
Not at all.
Not at all? Okay.
Both of these teams are coming in solely focused on this one game only. They're not thinking about the playoffs. They're not thinking about playoff seeding. Obviously, they both want to win, because more than likely that means everybody in the playoffs will have to come to their house,
right.
which is what you want.
Right.
But there's no doubt in my mind that neither of these teams are even thinking about that. They just want to win this game as if it's the last game of the season, as if this is a state championship.
Right.
And as a matter of fact, I kind of want to rename this rivalry to something else. Like, I think we should call this the Al Thomas Bowl.
The Al Thomas Bowl?
Yeah, I'm serious.
Yeah,
call it the Al Thomas Bowl. I don't know what it is with Coach Thomas. He likes to add...
swarming, storming.
Yeah. I want to apologize to my English teachers. There's a name for these type of words, but he likes to add stuff. He got the Screaming Eagles. The Swarming Hornets. What did they call them at Sherwood?
The Storming Warriors. Storming. Which created such anger to the old school Sherwood people that I you couldn't even explain. Like,
yeah, that's basically it. I want to we should call this the Al Thomas Bowl. Shout out to Al Thomas. He's definitely on the
Right.
If you don't know who he is, do your research.
Right. Yeah, you need to. If you don't know who that is and you're playing this kind, you really need to do your research. Like, get on Google, type in Al Thomas, and you'll trust me, you'll be a better person after that.
Absolutely.
Nah, absolutely, man. I agree with everything that you're saying, man, including the Al Thomas vote thing. I think that'll be a good thing. Of course, he's basically the guy that kind of started up, the winning traditions at both schools, and
absolutely.
He's kind of that's kind of his those two teams right there are kind of like the Adam and Eve of Montgomery County football as we know it right now, and if you kind of want to look at it, it's kind of proliferated throughout, the whole county. I mean, there was a point in time where it would have been hard to find a coaching staff without some kind of Al Thomas, / Changoris tie-in.
I mean, and I really want to do this one day, create a true Moco football coaching family tree. And
that'll be a big old tree, man.
Be at the root of that tree, no doubt about it. I mean, he was the original Seneca Valley coach dating back to 1975. He coached there up until 87, racked up 1, 2, 5, 6 state championships.
Right.
And then decided he was done there, and then got the ball rolling at Damascus and rattled off some more state championships, and then took the show to Sherwood.
Right. And got one.
And won another state championship, and a couple runner-ups in there. So, I mean, yeah. I guarantee you to this day, if we look at the current crop of coaches in Montgomery County, at least half of them can trace their lineage in some type of way back to Coach Thomas.
No, absolutely. So, absolutely. I agree with everything you're saying with that, man. And I think mentally, when QO faced Damascus in the first game, and we all know how prideful QO is about their defense, when they saw Jake Funk doing what he was doing, I think that really broke their morale. They broke their spirit.
Oh, absolutely.
Because they're just not used to somebody doing that to them. And I think that's
ever.
Ever. And I think that Seneca is going to have to kind of resign themselves to the fact that, they might have to see Jake Funk breaking down the sidelines and, high stepping into the end zone. That's pretty much what's going to have to, they have to kind of,
I will die if I see Jake Funk high step. That would be hilarious.
Hey, well, you never know what can happen, man. Rivalry games bring out the worst in people sometimes, man. You might get a high step, maybe 2. So, it's one of those situations where, like, I think Seneca kind of. I'm not saying that they're like, man, we're gonna have to give up, a bunch of big plays to them. I'm just saying that they have to prepare themselves to know that there might be situations in the game where he's gonna get loose, and you can't put your head down. You can't, go into the tank because of it. You gotta kind of just accept the fact that he's a great player and keep moving. Okay, everyone, we're here with Damascus and Seneca Valley greats, and with the game coming around the corner on Friday, I think it's only right to have Damascus great Connor Frazier, he was the quarterback, class of 2011, and also Seneca Valley great Tanner Valley, played quarterback and tight end and defensive end for Seneca Valley, class of 2012. Both of these guys are now doing big things on the college level. They're playing for Towson right now. They're on a 2-game winning streak after beating Villanova on Saturday. Thank you guys for joining us.
No problem. Yeah, thanks for having us.
Well, first of all, we all know the history of the two schools. Some of the great players that came through there. How special is this week for the players that to come through this community? And what is it like going into practice, going into this game?
Damascus and Seneca week is just such a historic week for both schools. It's a huge rivalry game, like you said. Me and Tanner joke about it all the time still. That's how big it is at both of our schools. If you're Damascus, you don't like Seneca. If you're Seneca, you don't like Damascus. So there's a lot of history and a lot of great players that have played, for both schools. So it's just, a very fun week to be a part of.
Right, right. You too, Tanner?
Yeah, another cool thing about that week is, a lot of our coaches played at the two schools. So
Right.
I know at Seneca, our coaches will tell us, cool stories of when they played in the game, what the rivalry was like for them, and it really gets into your blood. So you get that feeling like you're playing for the guys before you,
Right.
and it's just it's an exciting game. The focus at practice that week is just, it's like a playoff week.
Right.
So it's real fun. It's real intense and it's real exciting.
Right, right, absolutely, absolutely. Both of you guys started at quarterback in this game. How much pressure is on the signal caller in a rivalry game like this, and with everything on the line? Connor, you can go first, and then Tanner, you can go second.
I guess there's a decent amount of pressure that you can have just because, like Tanner said, usually our two teams are, fighting to, make it out of the race for the playoffs.
Right.
If you can get the upper hand with good quarterback play,
Right.
that can be a, decision or deciding factor in the game. But, you try not to put a lot of pressure on yourself. You just try and go out and have fun because the game's going to be close and it's going to be competitive.
Right, absolutely, absolutely.
I think when you're playing quarterback, you definitely had it in the back of your mind going into the game. Like through the week, you're like, it's a big game. I know a lot of people show up to those games, but
Right.
you really you want to treat it like another game.
Right.
You just don't want to get yourself too pumped up or anything, and stay focused and try to relax because for a lot of people, I know for Connor, it's a big moment.
Right, right.
You just want to try to treat it like another game, but it's just not.
You two are obviously Division I football players, and there's a lot of high caliber athletes and football players that play in that game. Talk about playing in that game with all those great athletes, and does that kind of add to it, knowing that you guys are going up against possibly college and maybe even NFL guys in the future?
There was a lot of guys I know when I played, and you looked at the other side of the ball and you were like, wow, these guys are real good. You had the key on them. I remember we were game planning for Zach Bradshaw my senior year.
Right.
He's at Virginia, I think. So playing up guys like him, even Connor, Brandon Phelps,
Right.
Joel Ross. Just saying the names, you still remember them now, so those guys were just lighting it up on the field. So
Right.
it's hard to, for a lot of teams, you just focus on one guy, but they always had a lot of guys you had to watch.
Right, absolutely. Same thing for you, Connor?
Yeah, I can say the same thing as well. Going against Seneca, we know that there is going to be a lot of athletes on the field, and obviously they had my senior year, we were just trying to shut down the running back. I think his name was Eddie Cunningham.
Right, right.
And he was a really good back, and then obviously they had Bernard, who was very tough to block.
Right.
And my junior year, or I guess it was my sophomore year when playing Seneca, played them twice that year, and they had a running back, Jaquan Moore, who was just a freak athlete.
Right.
And another defensive lineman, I can't really remember his name, but he was really good. They also had Joe Rankin that year.
Right, right.
Who had some time in the NFL. But like my senior year, like Tanner said, two of those guys that I played with my senior year were in NFL camps this year.
Right.
Brandon Phelps and Joe Ross.
Right, right.
So, it's just, there's a lot of talent on the field between both teams. And I think you can just attest that to both our schools having, awesome coaches
Right.
for the players. I think between our two schools, we probably have, some of the best coaches in the state.
Right, absolutely. Absolutely. I know you, Connor, you've been a part of some big rivalries outside of Seneca Valley Damascus, rival with QO, rival with Sherwood. Tanner, of course, the King's Trophy is another big one. that you're involved with Northwest. Compare the Seneca Damascus rivalry to those other ones that you guys have been part of. Is there anyone that kind of compares to it? Even the ones that you've been a part of in college. Obviously you guys played some high level games. Obviously went to the national championship a few years ago. Compare those things that you guys been into to the rivalry that Damascus and Seneca has.
We're actually playing Delaware this week, and that's our rivalry game each year.
Right.
But there's just something about high school football on Fridays that nothing can beat. Playing with your friends from when third grade to your senior year of high school, playing with the same kids. The home crowd. Friday nights. It's a different atmosphere than playing at the collegiate level.
Right.
There's with the rivalries that you mentioned, with us against Sherwood and Prince Orchard, they're all just, extremely tough and exciting games, and they usually come down to the fourth quarter.
Right.
A lot of fun playing those games.
Absolutely. Same thing with you, Tanner?
Yeah, like Connor said, we're playing Delaware this week, who's a big rival for Towson.
Right.
And it's always like a second nature. You think rivalry in college, the first thing I think of is, well, hey, this is like Damascus week in high school.
Right.
So every rivalry I think back, Damascus is the number one for me.
Right.
The King's Trophy is big, and playing Quince Orchard, schools like that was always like real tough. But I remember I just was always excited about Damascus, and even now these are probably the Damascus games were probably some of the biggest games that I got to be a part of.
Right.
And like Connor said, playing with your friends growing up. It's the kids down the street. Like you heard their names. You played them in other sports.
Right.
So there was always that added dimension, and it was just a Friday night rivalry that everyone looked forward to.
Right.
When you got to play them in other sports, everything came back to, well, we beat you guys in football that year,
right.
Stuff like that.
Right. Connor, you kind of alluded to it, about the dislike and the hate kind of that you have for each other when it comes on to Damascus and Seneca Valley. How much hate goes into it? Is it hate or just a mutual respect, but, you guys are kind of in our way? And did you guys know each other before you went to Towson? Did you guys like each other before you went to Towson? How?
Hey, I'll say it right now. I was Connor Frazier's biggest hater in high school.
Right.
We joke about that all the time.
Oh, okay. Right.
Yeah, it was so funny because me and Tanner would play each other in football and basketball each year. So obviously we knew who each other were.
Right.
And we were friends right when he got to Towson the year after I did, obviously, and we obviously had a Montgomery County connection, and we were friends and stuff. And it was just funny because he said that he disliked me in high school, and I don't even know if we ever even talked in high school. I think
right.
It's just the Damascus.
I never had a conversation with the guy.
Yeah.
Right.
It was just a Damascus effect.
What are some of your memories that you guys have from that game? What are some of your favorite, whether it's a play or a specific thing that happened in that game that you guys remember to this day?
I just remember, there's countless memories. My sophomore year, I didn't get to play them in the regular season because I had a broken collarbone at the time.
Right.
And I came back in the playoff game, and we were up 14-0 pretty quick, and we were just barely made it into the playoffs that year.
Right.
And they came back and ended up beating us by, I think, less than 3 points or something. I can't remember the exact score, but just those are the type of games that, whenever we play, it's always a close game. In my junior year, we lost in overtime with a field goal, right, Tanner?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a field goal, and then my senior year, we finally put it together, and we had a drive. I think I ran a touchdown in with 4 minutes left to win 27-23 against them.
Right.
You always are going to remember the games against Seneca.
Absolutely. What about you, Tanner? You remember any specific moments from that game?
I always remember before the game. You're getting ready. We sit in the weight room before the games, or like when you travel, sitting in the visiting locker room. Your heart's pounding. You're thinking about, it's finally here. And you mark it on your calendar, and just those little butterflies that you get before the game are just always make you feel. You feel kind of alive before the game.
Right.
And I remember my senior year. It was one of the later games of the year. We were both fighting for a playoff spot, and I remember our kicker ran out, and knocked down like a 41-yarder. I was thinking all these kids are so intense, and it's so cool to feel like a special teams play that has that effect. Thinking back to like the field goal that kind of set in overtime.
Right.
But you got to play. You got to play on all sides of the ball in those kinds of games.
Right.
It's like three-dimensional.
Right.
And just the whole atmosphere. You look into the crowds at the baskets. They have a great student section. The crowd's always packed. There's always like people standing along the sides on the track.
Right.
It's kind of like you feel like a professional football player out there. Everyone wants to watch, and that's one of my biggest memories from those games.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, and another thing I'll say too is every year it seemed like there was always, the students got involved with like.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I know that they spray painted a bunch, like our press box and all over our field and everything, and then one year a student from our school planted a tree in the middle of their
I remember
field,
that one. Yeah.
It was a branch. It was just a branch.
Not
that whole tree.
Still planted it. Still took the time to plant it in the middle of the field. It just shows that it's not just about the guys that play on the team. It's a whole community behind the teams.
Right. Absolutely. I think I forgot which year it was, but somebody did something to the eagle, something like that.
I think that might have been my senior year. They like took one of the eagles or something.
I think it was might have been the eagle by the baseball field. I think got taken that year.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I remember somebody took the eagle. I was like, wow. Yeah, you can't take the eagle.
It was.
Yeah, that's
the rage going inside.
Right, absolutely, man, absolutely. And finally, I have to do this. Predictions. What's gonna happen? Make a case for your squads. Make a case for your teams, man.
It's gonna be a big Damascus win on Friday night.
When you say big, what are you talking about? Like you talking about 30-point win? Like what kind of big are you talking about?
It'll be less than 10 points, I think.
Less than 10 points. Okay.
Just because it's always a close game.
Right. Tanner, you think it's gonna be a close game?
No, dude. Do I want it to be a close game? No. I think Seneca's always got the upper hand. But I'm gonna go with my guess. The score my senior year, I'm gonna say 29-19 Seneca.
Okay.
I remember rubbing that score into the face of Jimmy Westbrook. He was a coach at Damascus, but he was also a basketball coach at Seneca. So I used to always whisper in his ear during basketball season, 29-19. So I remember that number. I'm calling that one.
Right. Absolutely. Well, good luck for with your guys' game. Rivalry game versus Delaware. I know it's a big game for you guys. You guys are on a 2-game winning streak, trying to put together a little run to try to get into the playoffs. So, thank you guys for your support, and hopefully everything will work out.
Hey, thanks for having us. It was a great talk.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time.
Screaming Eagles.
Let's move on to the other big game, this week. We have, and this is one of the most surprising teams in the county, easily. They're coming off a surprising win over Clarksburg last week, and these are the RM Rockets, man. These guys, they're for real, okay? I understand they haven't really played a lot of people and all this other stuff. They are for real. They're doing their thing. Trust me. Like I like what they're doing over there, right? Are they a top 6 team right now? I don't know about that, but I definitely like their makeup. They're a run first team that can play a little bit of D. They're physical. Jordan Green. I mean, if you haven't gotten a chance to see this kid play, man, he's big, he's fast, he's physical, he's everything that you want in a running back. They're going up against Gaithersburg, at Gaithersburg, and trust me, Gaithersburg is one of those teams. They're a little bit up and down, but there's definitely talent there, Damon, and I think that they can do a lot of things that can make it difficult on our end. What do you think about this game overall, and do you see? Who do you see coming out the winner of this one? And this is going to determine probably a playoff spot.
So, yeah, like you mentioned, every week the Richard Montgomery Rockets have continued to impress me. As I mentioned at the top of the podcast, it's to the point now I'm having a hard time picking against them. They proved me wrong at every turn outside of the Northwest game. And even that game, they still came away looking good. I mean, if you go back and look at some of the comments before that game, a lot of people were predicting a running clock.
Oh, yeah.
And it wasn't even remotely close to that.
Mm-hmm.
Jordan Green has been a godsend for the Rockets. He's a man out there.
Right.
He's low. And any team that wants to get a victory over Richard Montgomery is going to have to stop him first.
Right.
And so far, only one team has been able to contain him. He went off last week versus a pretty good Clarksburg squad and put up 122 yards. That's really all you need to know about the Richard Montgomery Rockets.
Right.
The defense is pretty solid. They haven't given up more than 26 points all year, and that was in a blowout victory, so there was a lot of garbage time points there. So, yeah, the defense is pretty stout.
Right.
So, Gaithersburg is going to have their hands full. In talking to a few people, there's still a lot of non-believers out there, but I'm telling you, Richard Montgomery, they're looking good. Coach Klotz, he's ahead of schedule. I thought it would take at least another year or two to get them to this point, but they're right where they need to be. This is the administration expected when they hired Coach Klotz to take over their program, and he's delivered tenfold.
Right.
He has them in the playoffs. Now we're talking about home field advantage if they can close out just one more victory on the season.
Right.
Now, going to the Gaithersburg Trojans, this is an interesting team.
Yeah.
So far, they've put together a solid campaign. They're 5-3. But if you look deeper into the individual games, there's some outstanding games that they played.
Right.
Especially in two of their 3 losses. The 27-0 loss to Northwest in the opener gave us a general idea of, okay, this team is better than we thought they were. And then the Peyton Branch game, it was a 1-score loss, 21-13. It was like, okay, Gaithersburg legit.
Right.
But then you turn around and look at some of their victories: 35 points given up to Walter Johnson, a 2-point victory over Whitman, a 2-point victory over Wooten. Kind of look at those games a little sideways and try to figure out what's going on.
Sideways, right.
I know it sounds weird, but yeah, I'm congratulating them in their losses, and then I'm criticizing them in their victories. But
Right.
It's just something that doesn't sit comfortable with me when trying to project what this team is going to do moving forward.
Right.
So with that being said, I'm going with the Rockets in this victory in this matchup. I mean, and that's unfortunate for the Trojans because they really need this game if they want to make the playoffs, because they got Seneca Valley waiting in the wings in week 10. And depending on how that Seneca Valley Damascus game goes, that's not a position I would want to be in going to Seneca Valley to close out the season. I fully expect
Finally, a last game that we're going to talk about. Northwest is hosting Clarksburg. Clarksburg arguably is the best 4-4 team maybe in the state of Maryland. Clarksburg, we all know that they played Northwest tough. Northwest hasn't had the season that they wanted to have, but they're still in a position to make the playoffs and do some things. How do you see this game, Damon, and how do you see it playing out?
Yeah, this is do or die for the Coyotes. If they want to stay in the playoff conversation, they really need to pull off this victory. If they don't, then they're going to do a lot of scoreboard watching the final 2 weeks to see if they can squeak into the playoffs. Northwest, like you mentioned, not quite the season that they wanted to have, but with all that being said, they're still sitting in a good spot. Even if they drop the final 2 games of the season to Clarksburg and then Wooten in Week 10, they're still sitting pretty comfortable in the 4A West region.
Right.
But with that being said, there's no chance they want to limp into the playoffs with 2 losses.
Right.
This is a tough territory for Northwest. They haven't had 3 losses in the previous 2 years. And things are looking a little bit shaky. They've beaten the teams that we expected to beat. We expected them to beat, and they fell short against the elite teams in the county, i.e. Seneca, Sherwood, and Quince Orchard.
Right.
And honestly, it's gotten progressively worse when they're playing the elite teams. But with all that being said, outside of the Quince Orchard game, they still could have won the Sherwood and Seneca Valley games if things went slightly differently.
Right.
Fortunately, they didn't. That's the way it is. For Clarksburg, the loss to Richard Montgomery hurt them a lot last week, so they're scrambling now. Whatever Coach Hurd and his staff have in their bag of tricks, now's the time to pull it out. As you mentioned, Clarksburg tends to play Northwest tough, extremely tough. Last year, it was a hell of a game coming down to the last drive of the game. The year before, Clarksburg beat Northwest.
Right.
So that just shows you the quality of football these 2 teams play when they match up with each other.
Right.
Looking at it overall, it's going to be a tough road for Clarksburg. I expect them to play it close, but I just think Northwest has too much firepower for them in this matchup. So I have the Coyotes going down. I'm looking at 35-21.
Okay. I mean, honestly, that score makes sense because, I mean, it's been a close game between these two, no matter what the records are, over the last few years. So I definitely can get down with that score. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Sorry for running a little bit long. Damon, do you have anything else you want to say? Any other games you want to shout out before we get out of here?
Yeah, as usual, if you have any questions or comments, hit me up at Anderson on Twitter, or you can shoot me a message on the message board at mocofootball.com. Some other games of note, especially in the 4A South, outside of Seneca and Damascus, which play in the 3A West, we do have some other teams that are very, very much in the playoff hunt, and these final 2 weeks will determine whether they make it in and what their seeding will be. First off is Blake at Watkins Mill.
Mm-hmm.
Second is Rockville at Wheaton.
Right.
Don't even bother looking at the records. It's just all about who else is in the region. And as it stands right now, all 4 of those teams are in the
Right.
And then finally, we have one out-of-county matchup again this week. Springbrook is traveling all the way up to Aberdeen.
Hey, Aberdeen.
So, best of luck to the Blue Devils on that long road trip. Hope you guys can pull out the victory. You guys have had a strong season, and even though just by nature, you guys are in a tough region, so it doesn't look like the playoffs are in the cards. You can still end the season on a very, very positive note by taking down a quality Aberdeen team.
Okay. Well, that's all the time we got. See you guys next week.